Be me, a non-30 software engineer. Live a pretty quiet life. Got my hobbies, my job, my own place. Nothing crazy. For the last 2 years, I've been with my girlfriend, Betty. She's 29. When we first met, things were great. She was smart, funny, ambitious. She was also very vocal about her worldview. A staunch feminist, always talking about the patriarchy, systemic issues, stuff like that. I'm a live and let live kind of guy, so I didn't really care. People can believe what they want. I just figured it was part of her personality, something she was passionate about. The first year or so was smooth. We had fun, traveled a bit, everything seemed normal. The cracks started showing slowly, so slowly I barely noticed them at first. It began with small comments, little double standards. I'd hold a door open for her, and she'd either accept it with a smile or say, "I'm capable of opening my own doors, you know?" The reaction depended entirely on her mood that day. It was like a lottery. Then came the issue of paying for things. She talked a big game about financial independence and 50-50 partnerships. Her social media was filled with posts about how women don't need a man to provide for them. Yet, when we went out to eat, she'd have this magical ability to become fascinated by her phone or the restaurant's decor the exact moment the check arrived. I'd end up paying probably 80% of the time. I brought it up once, gently, mentioned that we could start splitting things more often to save money. The reaction was frosty. She said something about how it was unbecoming for a man to nickel and dime his partner. I was confused. So 50-50 was the ideal, unless it actually had to be put into practice? I let it slide. It wasn't worth the argument. The real pressure cooker started a few months ago. We were invited to a dinner with one of her close friends and the friend's new fiancé. We get to this nice Italian place, sit down, and the friend immediately thrusts her hand out. On her finger is a diamond that could probably be seen from space. Betty goes into overdrive with the congratulations, squealing and hugging her friend. But over her friend's shoulder, she kept shooting these looks at me. Not subtle looks. These were the kind of looks that could burn through steel. The entire dinner was basically just the two of them talking about wedding plans. Venues, dresses, catering, all of it. The friend's fiancé and I just sat there, nodding along like a couple of bobbleheads. At one point, the conversation shifted to money. Betty took this as her cue to get on her soapbox. She went on a 5-minute lecture about how ridiculous it is that society expects men to bear the financial burden. "It's 2023, she announced to the table. "A modern relationship is an equal partnership. I would never expect a man to be my personal bank." I just sip my water, trying not to make eye contact with anyone. The meal ends, and the waiter comes over. He places the bill folder right in the middle of the table. A moment of silence hangs in the air. The other guy, without missing a beat, picks it up and puts his card inside. Betty, the champion of 50-50 partnerships, suddenly developed an intense interest in a smudge on her water glass. She didn't move a muscle, didn't even glance at her purse. I waited for what felt like an eternity. Nothing. With a quiet sigh, I pulled out my wallet and paid for our share. The car ride home was one of the quietest we've ever had. The next evening, I was online playing some games with my best friend, Mark. Mark is married, has his life together. He's a no-nonsense kind of guy. I told him about the dinner and the whole awkward situation with the bill. I heard him laugh through the headset. He said, "Let me guess, she's a feminist right up until the point where her own money is involved." I admitted that was a pretty accurate summary. His tone got more serious. He asked me if the friend's engagement was causing any issues. I told him about the looks she was giving me across the table. He warned me then. He told me to be prepared for the pressure campaign to begin. He said, "It starts with hints, then it's not so subtle hints, then it's her mom calling you, and finally it's an ultimatum. Just be ready for it, man." I laughed it off, told him he was being dramatic. He was not being dramatic. A week later, the hints began. I'd walk into the living room, and she'd be on her laptop. She would quickly switch tabs, but not before I saw the page she was on. A well-known jewelry store's website, on the engagement ring section. This happened maybe 3 or 4 times. She'd have this little oops expression on her face, saying she was just looking at necklaces or something equally unbelievable. Then came the comments during movies or TV shows. We were watching some generic streaming series one night. A character proposed to his girlfriend. Betty lets out this long, drawn-out sigh. She turned to me and said, "You just don't see that kind of old-fashioned romance anymore. A man who knows what he wants and isn't afraid to commit. I just grunted in response, not wanting to engage. It felt like a trap. Any response I could give would be the wrong one. Her criticism started extending to my personal life. I have a workshop in my garage where I build and paint scale models. It's my way to decompress after a long day of staring at code. I've been doing it for years. She always used to say it was a cute hobby. Suddenly, it wasn't cute anymore. It was immature. She started asking me when I was going to outgrow my toys and find a real adult hobby. According to her, a 30-year-old man shouldn't be playing with plastic spaceships. My gaming with Mark also became a target. It was no longer just a way to keep in touch with my best friend. It was now evidence that I was avoiding responsibility and stuck in a state of perpetual adolescence. Every aspect of my life that wasn't directly contributing to some shared future she had imagined was now a character flaw. The situation really came into focus when we went to a summer barbecue at Mark's house. It was the first time Betty had met Mark's wife, Sarah. Sarah is awesome, down-to-earth, funny, doesn't take herself too seriously. The moment we got there, I saw the difference in their dynamic. Mark was at the grill, Sarah was bringing out trays of food. They moved around each other like a well-oiled machine. They were constantly joking, sharing little inside glances. It was a partnership. There was no leader, no follower, just two people working together. We were all sitting around the patio table later, just chatting. Sarah was telling a story about how they bought their house. She was talking about how they both worked extra shifts and saved every penny for 2 years to get the down payment. She laughed and said, "We were so broke. We lived on ramen and dreams for a while, but we did it together. We were a team." It was a nice story about mutual effort and shared goals. Betty, however, heard something else entirely. She had this faint, condescending smile on her face. She chimed in with, "That's sweet. It's just so important for women to have their own financial independence, though. I could never imagine putting my future on hold and waiting for a man to build a life for me." The air went completely still. Mark just stared at her. Sarah's friendly smile froze on her face. She had just told a story about being an equal partner in building a life, and Betty had twisted it into a narrative about being a dependent, helpless woman. The implication was that Sarah was somehow less of a feminist because she had built something with her husband instead of doing it all by herself. Sarah, to her credit, handled it with grace. She just gave a little confused laugh and said, "Oh, it was never about waiting. It was about building it faster, together." Then she immediately changed the subject. Betty seemed completely oblivious to the social crater she had just created. On the drive home, I didn't say anything about it. I knew it would just start a massive argument that would go nowhere. But it was a huge turning point for me. I saw her ideology in action, and it wasn't about equality. It was about female superiority, dressed up in academic language. In her world, a woman achieving something alone was a triumph. A man and a woman achieving something together was a woman compromising her independence. After that BBQ, the pressure ramped up even more. She started talking about her friends' weddings constantly. Every conversation seemed to circle back to it. Jessica's wedding is going to be in the fall. Her fiancé got her the most beautiful ring. "Did you see Lauren's engagement photos? They look so happy. He really stepped up." It was exhausting. It felt like every discussion was a veiled accusation. She also began to weaponize her family against me. She'd be on the phone with her mom and would conveniently put it on speakerphone whenever I was in the room. Her mom would inevitably ask, "So, has Jerry bought a ring yet? My friends are all asking me when you're going to get engaged." Betty would do this fake, flustered routine. "Oh, Mom, stop. You're embarrassing me. We're taking things at our own pace." But she'd be looking right at me with a smirk on her face. It was a calculated move. The us and we in our relationship started to disappear. It was no longer about what we wanted for the future. It was about what she deserved, what she was owed after investing 2 years of her life. Her posts on social media became more aggressive. Long rants about men who have commitment issues and the emotional labor that women perform in relationships. Her friends would all comment in agreement, creating this echo chamber where her feelings were not just validated, but amplified. To them, I was just another anonymous male statistic, another example of toxic masculinity and men's fear of strong women. They didn't know that I was the one paying for most of our dates. They didn't know I was the one who fixed her car when it broke down last winter. They didn't know I spent a week helping her father put up a new fence at his house. All they knew was the narrative she presented, a successful woman being held back by a man-child who wouldn't commit. I felt like I was going crazy. On one hand, I did care about her. There were still good moments, but on the other hand, I felt like I was being backed into a corner. Marriage was being presented not as a mutual decision between two people who love each other, but as a prize that she had earned and that I was withholding. The ring wasn't a symbol of love anymore. It was a trophy. It was a status update. I talked to Mark about it again. He listened patiently while I vented for 20 minutes. When I was done, he was quiet for a moment. Then he just said, "Dude, a relationship is a partnership, or it's nothing. You're not a partner in her eyes. You're an accessory, a resource, a stepping stone to the life she thinks she's supposed to have." He asked me a simple question that hit me like a ton of bricks. Do you honestly think she would be there for you if you lost everything tomorrow? If you lost your job, your apartment? Would she be your partner in rebuilding, or would she be gone? I didn't have an answer, and the fact that I didn't have an immediate yes was the only answer I needed. I knew then that things were coming to an end. I just didn't realize how soon or how explosive it would be. The breaking point came on a random Tuesday night. I came home from work, tired, just wanted to eat dinner and relax. Betty was sitting on the couch, staring at her phone. She didn't even look up when I came in. The atmosphere was heavy. I could tell she was angry about something. I asked her what was wrong. She looked up from her phone, and her eyes were filled with rage. She told me her younger cousin just got engaged, her 24-year-old cousin, who had been dating her boyfriend for just over a year. That was the final straw for her. The fuse was lit. She stood up and started pacing the living room. The calm, collected intellectual persona she projected to the world was gone. What was left was pure, unfiltered rage. She started yelling, not just talking loudly, but yelling. "I don't understand what is wrong with you. What is your problem?" I tried to calm her down, told her to lower her voice. That was like throwing gasoline on a fire. "No, I will not lower my voice. I have been patient. I have been understanding." She was gesturing wildly, her face red. "My little cousin, who is 5 years younger than me, is getting married. Every single one of my friends is either engaged or married. And what do I have? What am I doing?" She pointed a finger at me. "I'm wasting the best years of my life waiting for you to grow up." I told her that marriage is a huge step, that it's something we should discuss calmly, not scream about. She just laughed, a bitter, nasty sound. "Discuss? We've been together for 2 years, Jerry. The discussion is over. What more do you need to know? You know my goals. You know what I want. Why are you dragging your feet?" It felt like I was on trial. I told her that I didn't appreciate being pressured, that this wasn't how I envisioned making a lifelong commitment. She got right in my face then. "Pressure? You think this is pressure? You want to see pressure? Fine, here it is. You have 1 month. 1 month to get your act together and put a ring on my finger. If you don't, we are done. I'm not throwing away my 30s on a man who is too much of a coward to commit." An ultimatum. Mark had called it perfectly. She stood there, breathing heavily, chest puffed out, like she had just won some great victory. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. And for the first time, I didn't see the woman I'd fallen in love with. I saw a stranger, someone who viewed our relationship as a transaction that was past its due date. I just nodded slowly and said, "Okay." My quiet response seemed to confuse her. She was expecting a fight, more arguing. I just walked into my office and closed the door. She probably thought I was in there, frantically looking at ring websites. I wasn't. For the next 2 weeks, I was a ghost. I went to work, came home, was polite and civil, but distant. I didn't initiate conversations. I gave one-word answers. Betty seemed to think her tactic was working. She became much sweeter, almost smug. She'd make comments like, "I saw the most beautiful ring setting today." Or, "My friend Jessica said, we should look at this one wedding venue, just for fun." I just nodded along. But in my office after she went to bed, I was making a plan. I opened a new bank account. I started looking for a new apartment, and I started writing things down. I opened a notebook and started making a list. Every double standard, every condescending comment, every time her actions completely contradicted her supposed feminist ideals. It wasn't for revenge, it was for clarity. I needed to see it all in one place, to make sure I wasn't the crazy one. The list grew longer every day. The time she called my promotion at work a product of the old boys club, despite knowing I had worked 60-hour weeks for months to get it. The time she insisted we go to a fancy restaurant for her birthday, then got angry when I suggested she contribute to the bill, saying, "You don't ask a woman to pay on her birthday." The time I overheard her on the phone with a friend, joking about how marriage is an exit strategy for a woman's career. 2 weeks after her ultimatum, I had everything in order. A lease signed, movers scheduled for the weekend. That evening I told her we needed to talk. She sat down on the couch, a triumphant smile spreading across her face. This was it, the moment she'd been waiting for. She probably imagined I was about to get down on one knee. I sat in the chair opposite her. I didn't have a ring box. I had my notebook. I told her, "You're right. We do need to talk about our future. You gave me a month to make a decision, and I have." Her smile widened. And, I said, opening the notebook, "I've decided you're absolutely correct. We shouldn't be together, because I am never going to propose to you." It took a second for the words to register. Her smile didn't just disappear, it was like it was violently erased from her face. Her expression shifted from triumph to confusion, then to disbelief. "What? What are you talking about? Is this a joke?" "No joke," I said, keeping my voice perfectly calm and even. "I've given this a lot of thought, and I've made a list of the reasons why marrying you would be the single worst decision of my life. I figured you deserved an explanation." Before she could explode, I started reading. Reason number 1. Your core principles are a contradiction. You publicly claim that marriage is a patriarchal institution designed to oppress women. Why would you demand that I force you into an arrangement that you yourself define as oppressive? She just stared, her mouth slightly open. Reason number 2, finances. You preach about 50-50 partnership, but a review of my bank statements shows that I've paid for approximately 82% of all our shared expenses for the past year. That's not a partnership. That's me subsidizing your lifestyle while you claim financial independence. "That's not true," she sputtered. "I have the receipts," I said flatly and continued. Reason number 3, your contempt for men. I have listened to you talk about toxic masculinity, male privilege, and the general inadequacy of men for 2 years. You don't see me as an individual. You see me as a representative of a gender you fundamentally seem to despise. How can you build a life with someone you don't even respect? I didn't wait for an answer. Reason number 4, lack of support. A partner is supposed to be a cheerleader. When I talked about wanting to start a small side business, you called it a risky distraction. You didn't offer encouragement. You saw it as a threat to the financial stability you expect from me. My dreams are an inconvenience to your life plan. Her face was now a mask of pure fury. Reason number 5, and this is the most important one, your view of marriage itself. You don't see marriage as a loving partnership. You see it as a prize to be won. It's a social status symbol. The ring, the wedding, the title of wife, that's what you want. The actual husband attached to it seems to be an afterthought, a means to an end. I closed the notebook. So, no, I'm not going to propose. I'm not a coward who is afraid of commitment. I am a rational person who is afraid of entering into a legally binding contract with a hypocrite who has shown me nothing but contempt and disrespect. Your ultimatum worked. It forced me to make a decision. And my decision is to end this. The silence in the room was deafening. Then came the explosion. You misogynist!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "You are everything that's wrong with men. You can't handle a strong, successful woman, so you have to tear her down with this list of lies." She stood up and started throwing things. A decorative pillow hit the wall next to my head. Then a magazine. "It's all because of your fragile male ego. You're intimidated. You're pathetic." I didn't flinch. I just sat there and watched. Her entire argument was an ad hominem attack. She didn't refute a single point I made. She couldn't, because they were all based on her own words and actions. All she had left was a list of buzzwords. I stood up. "My movers are coming on Saturday. I'll be out of your life by the end of the weekend. You can tell your friends and family whatever you want. Tell them I was a coward. Tell them I was intimidated. We both know the truth." I walked into the bedroom and started packing a bag with my essentials for the next few days. She followed me, screaming the entire time. Curses, insults, accusations. It was all just noise. It was the sound of her carefully constructed narrative falling apart, and she couldn't handle it. I walked out of the apartment without looking back. The sound of her yelling faded as I walked down the hall. The sense of relief was overwhelming. It felt like I had taken off a 100-pound backpack I didn't even realize I was carrying. Fast forward about 3 months. I was sitting in a bar with Mark, having a beer. My new apartment was great. It was smaller, but it was mine. I had invested the money I was saving from not paying for 2 people into that side business I had wanted to start. It was slowly beginning to take off. My models and gaming stuff were set up, and nobody was there to call them immature. I was happier than I had been in a long time. I was free. Mark slid his phone across the table to me. "You should see this." It was a screenshot of Betty's social media page. There was a very long post, complete with a selfie of her looking sad but resolute. The text was an epic saga. It was about how she had finally found the strength to leave a toxic relationship. It talked about the subtle signs of emotional abuse, about men who use weaponized incompetence to control their partners. It painted a picture of me as a manipulative, insecure man-child who couldn't stand her success and tried to sabotage her happiness. The final paragraph was a call to arms for all strong women to never settle for a man who is not ready to celebrate them. The comment section was a flood of support from her friends. "You're so brave. His loss, queen. This is why I've given up on men." I read the whole thing. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel hurt. I just felt nothing. I handed the phone back to Mark. He looked at me, expecting some kind of reaction. I just took a sip of my beer and smiled. "Let her have her story," I said. "She needs it more than I do." We clinked our glasses. The truth didn't need 1,000 likes to be real, and I was finally living it.